June 28th of this year, if I'm not mistaken, will mark 40 years since a bunch of crazy long hairs and drag queens started throwing bottles in Greenwich Village, 1969, according to the Wikipedia. Yes, June 28th, 1969. Now, I mean, there were certainly a lot of complications with my issue, you know, chromosomally, etc. And I always felt that I was a little girl, you know, from the very beginning. And I realized that I, you know, thought differently than boys my age. You know, and having been raised by at least one Buddhist parent, you know, my father went to a Buddhist master who told him the same thing one of my friends, Minister Kim at the Arlington Street Church in Boston, told me, that is considered in that culture to be a very high, if not the highest incarnation, that unification of the male and female divine. But, you know, you take a long time explaining to intellectuals and not to bullies. And, you know, there was a lot of that beating me up back in the day. I was in a very rough private school where the boys frequently beat on me. And I got tired of that, you know. And my grandmother was a very enlightened woman. And, you know, she told me, it was about 3 or 4 months after my father had died in 1975, and I was not getting along with my mother, who knew that I liked girls and boys. And so she had thrown me out a number of times. She was really abusive to me. This was really tearing my grandmother up inside. And so she said to me one day after I came home all bloodied, she said, "You need to tell those boys that you like boys and girls." And she said, "So it's no longer a secret." She said, "You take the power away from those bullies." Well, she gave me half of the puzzle, but I was so angry the next time this kid, Patrick Keene from South Boston, next time he beat on me, I looked at him and I said, "The next time you touch me," I said, "I'm gonna tell those guys that I'm gay and that you and I were having a lover's quarrel." He never touched me again, and I found that to be very useful. And I was kind of a scoundrel. I mean, you know, I was still thrown out of the house a lot by my mother. And finally, one time when I was 14, I just got tired of being thrown out by her. And I said, "That's it. I'm moving out." My father had died. I had been uprooted from, you know, my friends in South Florida. You know, my life had become pretty horrible. I had the first of many suicide attempts. You know, I just was very unhappy with the world. And I ended up finding a beautiful boyfriend who was older than I was, and I was 14, and he was in his early 20s. And for those people who really object about it, the courts didn't. After the first interview with my mother, they realized that, you know, it was a bad placement to keep me with her. You know, it's kind of a shame to say that. I mean, my mother, you know, she does the best she can with what she's got, and, you know, granted, it's not a lot when it comes to me. But anyway, so, you know, I told people who I was at an early age. My first gay pride march was in 1975. It was in Boston, Massachusetts, and there were some evangelical Christians out there throwing fruit at us. And, you know, I had that problem with team sports that a lot of the sissy boys have. I threw it like that. That, you know, is a little awkward and embarrassing. But, so this, of all people, is evangelical minister. We called them fundamentalists in those days, or just thumpies for short, as in Bible thumpers. And as he's throwing the fruit at me, he's calling me an abomination of God. I was like, well, that's just peachy keen. Peach flies by. Then grapefruit came close to me, and it missed me. So I picked up the grapefruit, and I was mad at this point. I threw it back. Only this time, it was a direct hit. And I beamed this guy off the head. You know, and I got my first taste of real protest. I mean, I had done protest marches when I was 12, protesting the tiger cages in Vietnam that government was locking people up in, you know, 9 to 11 people to a tiger cage. But anyway, you know, I had to survive in the city of Boston. I resorted to selling pot and selling myself. It took me 2 years to finally become emancipated legally, so I could live out on my own, so I could get some of my father's money from his estate. But, you know, in watching Harvey Milk recently, it certainly brings back a lot of memories. And you know, it's kind of sad. It used to really crack me up when Anita Bryant would start talking about the evils of homosexuality. Actually, she was talking about the evils that come about because society does not accept it. You know, employers that won't hire people who are obvious, or males who are a little feminine, or females who are a little butch. They won't hire them because they might be gay or lesbian. And so they have to resort to selling drugs or selling their bodies because their families don't want them at home. You know, this is a very, very tough thing, and it amazes me. Talk about throwing out the baby with the bathwater. This is so pervasive in the United States among parents that just think, oh, well, I've got defective goods. My child is a sinner. I'm going to throw him out right now. It's absolutely disgraceful. Fortunately, among a few of my Johns and, you know, one person who befriended me and became my second mentor and father, you know, I got a further education than I would have in school. They taught me how to get along in any tier of society. You know, and I had a lot of that growing up. I mean, my family was from way the right side of the tracks, and you know, I managed to absorb a lot of the cultural stuff when I was young. I was very involved in music and singing and art, and you know, I've always had a passion for the arts and the healing it brings. But anyway, you know, in preparation for the 40th anniversary of Stonewall, I think it's a good idea for people to come out. You know, it always fills in that hole that exists with people who think they don't know anybody who's gay, lesbian, bi, or transgender. And, you know, good people that, you know, admit to the world, hey, this is who I am, deal with it now, or don't, but just leave me alone and let me be free. Well, you know, it changes things. It helps to change things gradually or rapidly. So, you know, if you can't come out for whatever reason, that's fine. Just don't attack and criticize other people for doing exactly what you do or would like to do. This is Yoose the Faery King. Thank you for listening, and a very, very early happy Pride. Namaste. Have a wonderful